How you doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we have so much to get into in such a short period of time, so I'm going to waste nothing with this one. Shout out to all you guys chiming in for our latest Big Mets update segment here, March 23rd, 2025. I'm Giddy, and in case you're wondering, Wardy, why exactly is that? That's because opening day is just mere days away. This Thursday in Houston, baby, we're going to be covering every game this year for the Metropolitans like we typically do, the same way that we're going to go over the key takeaways from the Mets tying their spring game yesterday 5-5 and winning in a very dominant fashion today, just at the time of recording this one now, 10-2 over the Marlins, headlined by guys in Alexander Canario, Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, and Tyrone Taylor. The entire Mets outfield was on a hitting spree today. We'll expand more on that, along with the Mets official rotation announcement per Carlos Mendoza. What is the 1 through 5 going to be to start the year? Does it make sense versus maybe does it not make sense? We'll get into all those respective debates, along with why you probably clicked on this video. Yeah, you know how we just did videos over the past couple days on how both Brett Baty and Luisangel Acuña are looking like true locks to be on this roster to begin the year? Well, fast forward to present day, which is today, and reports have come out earlier which has indicated that not only are the Mets seeking an external bat still for the infield, but they're doing it with the entire purpose to have Luisangel Acuña potentially begin the year in AAA. Why exactly is that? Does that make sense for this Mets team? How do you guys feel about it? And so much more is what we're deep diving. So thank you guys kindly for smashing that like and subscribe on as you first chime in. It really does mean a lot, and let me know all your initial reactions in the comments down below, as this is one of two forms of content on the platform today, as I'll also be live probably around 8:30 p.m. Eastern, barring changes on the time there later today, as we're going to have a big live show, as we're going to be breaking down and ranking in a tier fashion the entire Mets roster for 2025. It's going to be a lot of fun, so hope to see you guys there. But without further ado, let's get into this one, and let's start off on a brief with what transpired with the Mets yesterday and their 5-5 spring tie. I was out of town in Manhattan all day yesterday. You guys saw my video I dropped right before I hit the road. Had a lot of fun with some good buddies of mine. Shout out to Borna, Richie, Jake Asman. You guys know who you are. And we had a great time at the Knicks game yesterday, but that doesn't change the fact that the Mets had a game as well, and they tied 5-5. And the key takeaways from that were Tyler Megill having his final spring start and looking pretty much as advertised. 5.1 innings, 6 hits allowed, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. That's pretty much the Megill MO. You're going to get some outings that aren't the sharpest out of him, and you're going to get some outings where he looks ace caliber because of the velocity especially. And then you're like, okay, Tyler Megill's a mainstay in this rotation. The big question for Tyler, and that was asked by Gary Cohen when speaking to David Stearns in the Mets booth today before the conclusion of their game 10-2 over the Marlins. And when talking about Tyler Megill in particular, Stearns reiterated how, yeah, you know, he obviously has had a steady incline and gradually working on things with his arsenal. This is now the 4th consecutive year where Tyler Megill was initially on the outside looking in to even be in this Mets rotation, and now, thanks in large part due to injury, he will now be the Mets' one of their key starters to begin the year. And that's crazy to say, but it really isn't when you know the health statuses of these pitchers and Tyler Megill embedded in the organization, why the Mets feel as bullish as they do on him, because he definitely has upside still. And I understand that some Mets fans don't love the Tyler Megill story. They think that that experiment should come to an end. But I think one way or another, this will be the make or break year for Megill in the organization, right? If he goes out there and proves himself fantastic, then the Mets truly have a lethal arm that they can try to at least depend on, even if it's in the back end of the rotation throughout the majority of the year. Maybe a swingman type, maybe a true reliever makes most sense for him. But what I can tell you is that it really feels like, in similarity to Brett Baty, this will be a make or break year for Tyler Megill staying in the Mets organization. I hope he not only runs with it, but has a lot of Mets fans, including myself to a degree, say, wow, what a direction upward that Tyler Megill made. And I'm really happy to see him as a back end or even middle of the pack starter for this Mets rotation. He's got a lot of upside, and he's got a lot of pitches that he's utilizing. We know that when it comes to Megill. And outside of him, we saw guys in AJ Minter go out for a scoreless inning yesterday. Positive news on AJ Minter as well. Initially yesterday, he wasn't necessarily overly optimistic as to if he'll be starting the year on time with the Mets or not. Well, fast forward today, David Stearns, when asked by Gary Cohen, was pretty optimistic and said, thankfully, we don't even have to make a decision on him today. We can really let this drag out into the official end of spring, and that's what they're going to do in the case of AJ Minter. But AJ right now honestly looks like he could begin the year in this Mets bullpen, and that would make sense, especially after the news that we just found out earlier today, which is that yes, the Mets are officially setting down Nunez, so their bullpen is pretty much set with the assumption that AJ Minter cracks the bullpen, and if he doesn't, then they will have a greater question as to Is both Huascar Brazoban and Max Kranick cracking the bullpen, or will it be just one currently when Nunez starting the year in the minor leagues? We talked about that in yesterday's video and the day prior, and no one should be surprised by this. It's the most non-shocking news possible if you guys have just been following along with the Mets past couple weeks. Nunez has been slightly behind in his ramp-up that we know. The velocity, the slider velocity as well, is all great. Again, Edwin Diaz light is what I love to call Danilo Nunez, but given Nunez's latest outing where he gave up a couple runs and also just needs a little bit more reps there in the minor leagues, that's exactly why the Mets have him starting the year, not with the Mets, but in AAA Syracuse. The only reason, and that's because he has a minor league option, unlike Paul Blackburn. And because Paul Blackburn doesn't have that final option, the Mets want to maximize Blackburn's abilities, in which he's probably going to need to eat a decent amount of innings from the Mets out of the bullpen to begin the year, because you don't know exactly how much length you're going to get from the guys that we're going to talk about just here in the next couple minutes, including guys like Tyler Megill. But on the bullpen front, Paul Blackburn is a lock. He is in, and out to begin the year is Danilo Nunez, but it won't be long before the Mets call up Danilo after he gets a nice early ramp up there in Syracuse, because let's not forget, Danilo Nunez is quite literally one of the best options available for the Mets in their bullpen as we currently sit and break this down. So much so that not only am I optimistic about Nunez's abilities when he is with this Mets team this year, but I firmly believe that Nunez can come out and stay healthy and be one of the more reliable guys all year long, just like he was in the limited sample size they had for the Mets last year. Sorry, my apologies, folks. Had to send a quick text. But we're going to continue with the same live roll because that's what we're going to do. So Danilo Nunez is out to begin the year, but that means that one of Max Kranick or Huascar Brazoban, clearly it's Max Kranick between himself and Brazoban, between the two right now, to crack that bullpen. Now the big question is if AJ Minter's out, both Huascar and Brazoban will likely make the team. Otherwise, it'll probably just be, Brazoban and Kranick. Otherwise, it'll probably just be Max Kranick, barring changes. And staying on the topic of pitching, everybody, not only did Tyler Megill have another pretty much stereotypical outing, what you'd expect from him in spring training, well, as we fast forward to today's Mets game in which they won 10-2, let's not forget the offensive contributions from yesterday as well. Can't forget that. Brandon Nimmo did go 2 for 4 yesterday that we saw with a double, which is great to see him in the DH spot. We saw Alexander Canario, which we have a lot to say on here shortly, going 1 for 1 with a pinch hit double yesterday. Pete Alonso 1 for 3 with a run scored. Lindor recorded a hit. We saw Soto score a run, even though that he did not record a hit. And Hayden Sanger had himself a solo shot, his first home run of spring, as a man that'll likely be the Mets' backup catcher to begin the year. They're backing up Louis Torrens. Jose Siri had a hit and a run scored too, and that's all she wrote from yesterday's game versus today in the Mets' dominant 10-2 victory. I understand it's spring training. I understand that this may mean very little to you as a fan with spring training results, and that's fine, but let's focus on what we need to focus on. It's the pitching, it's the position battles, and everything in between. And there's one man that certainly stood out yet again today by doing more of what he's done this spring training, and that's going to be Mr. Griffin Canning. Canning now this spring training has officially been totaled. After giving the Mets 4.1 innings today of just 2 earned run ball with 6 strikeouts, Canning now gave the Mets 14.1 total spring innings, a 1.88 ERA, 11 hits allowed, 5 walks, 3 earned runs, and 22 strikeouts. That'll certainly play for Griffin Canning, who's going to throw you the kitchen sink, but also has completely deviated away from his four-seam fastball, was his most dominant pitch in recent years. And when I say dominant, I mean in the sense of usage at 60+% with the Angels. Doesn't mean it was good, because it was absolute batting practice for anyone that knew how to barrel a meatball of a heater going right down the pipe. Since then, Griffin Canning has become more of that prototypical slider changeup guy, and obviously the sinker too, even though he barely utilized it today, was heavy on the slider that we saw sitting right around, 88 to 90 miles per hour. The changeup we saw right around 89 to 90 plus. The four seam was topping out at barely 94, sitting 92. So we know it's a little bit of a meatball there when it comes to Griffin Canning's fastball, but if he can work on the shape and refine and retool his arsenal the way that both Jeremy Hefner and Desi Drusco have done a fantastic job and working with them this spring, that is exactly why Griffin Canning is now set to hopefully do great things for the Mets as soon as this season begins. Because Canning right now, folks, and this is what I know caused some stir, at least in Mets land, as it was dropped earlier today. Folks, Griffin Canning is going to start the year as the Mets' number 3 starter. That is what we're getting, everybody. This is the official Mets rotation begin the year. Shout out to Jacob, my amazing editor. We had this chefed up from a couple days ago, waiting for the official announcements. Clay Holmes is your number 1. Tyler Megill's number 2. Griffin Canning's number 3. And David Pearson's number 4. Kodai Senga's number 5. The graphic is just slightly cropped and cut out from me showing you this at the moment. But Kodai is at the 5 and Pearson's at the 4. In case you're wondering, Wardy, why is Carlos Mendoza going with Clay Holmes, Tyler Megill, and Griffin Canning? three question marks at the end of the day as to what you're getting as a starter. While that is true, it's also true that the Mets have to buy into a degree in the spring training results, especially in the case of Clay Holmes more than anyone, obviously. And secondly, they also know that their first matchup against the Astros is a more righty dominant lineup not named Yordan Alvarez. So why not maximize that and try to maximize the ability to be creative about your matchups? Knowing that the Mets really don't have any true ace right now because Senga needs to be ramped up more, we'll see how healthy and consistent will be in this five-man rotation to begin the year. But knowing that there isn't like a clear standout for the most part, the Mets can interchange these guys based more on matchups and what makes sense based on the teams they're playing. So that's why the first series is going to be already starters in Houston. And then when we have our second series there, that's where you're going to have the David Pearsons, the Kodai Sengas. And then, yes, Tyler Megill is currently slotted for the Mets opening day game. They're at home for their home opener there against the Blue Jays. Yes, another year where we're going to get a home opener or some type of opening day for Tyler Megill where he's slotted to be the Mets starter in said game. And I know you guys love some of these guys, you hate some of these guys, but what I will tell you is what we see on paper right now is not necessarily indicative whatsoever as to the performance that we're getting. If we're going to take everything as face value from what Griffin Canning gave us last year, Megill, everyone else, etc., Clay Holmes, mind you, first time as a starter since 2018, then you're going to want to throw up and say that this rotation is absolutely cooked. But that is not the way that you can approach this, nor should you approach this when understanding the greater reality behind why the Mets have things configured the way that they do, the reasoning behind it, the logic behind it, and how this will be an ever-changing thing throughout the course of the year based on who's performing versus who's not, who's thriving in the minor leagues, who's not. Are they going to add anyone externally lead up to the trade deadline? So much can and will happen. I'll be following along every step of the way here on the platform like we always do, everybody. But as I said, the rotation is now as follows. That is your 1 through 5. So let's talk a little bit more on the offensive takeaways from this 10-2 victory. Because the Mets, again, they had extra base hits galore. They had at least 7 extra base hits in this game. They had multiple home runs that we saw. And literally everything on the extra base hit and a home run front came for the most part from everyone in the outfield. Yeah, that was really impressive. Outside of Francisco Lindor, who had a good day at the plate today, going 2 for 4 with a double, which is encouraging. Just under the Mendoza line to pretty much wrap up spring training. That's okay. Very much a normal slow start here in the case of Lindor. But in the case of other guys, there's been one man that we've been trying to figure out what is his role going to be for the Mets this year. And that's Alexander Canario. After the Mets acquired Canario from the Cubs a couple weeks ago in the early goings of spring training, the belief was, okay, they're going to continue to try to trade Starling Marte. He's very limited in the outfield. We know that. Okay, they're going to try to make roster room here. Okay, are they really going to just try to sneak him in the waiver wire? Not Carlos Mendoza, David Stearns, when talking to Gary Cohen on the topic of Canario, explained his upside and his uber athleticism, knowing that this is a guy that's a former top prospect, especially a part of the Chris Bryant trade back in the day, if you know, all those kind of things. And Canario, since it hasn't really been able to put himself as a consistent MLB player, more so for the lack of opportunity than anything else. Has some swing and miss that Stearns highlighted, and while David did make note that, yes, there's certainly a likelihood that we could put him on waivers, but we have a great problem to have right now, and this is something that we're going to continue to evaluate, because Alexander Canario, of course, in one of the final spring games of the year for the Mets, without question, gave them a tremendous game. 3 for 4, 2 home runs, including a grand effing salami, folks. 5 RBIs, 314 average, over 1,000 OPS for Canario. Yes, Canario has struck out a decent amount this spring, but he has the power. We've seen that at the major league level, literally in the major leagues over the past couple years with the Cubs. He has shown the power. We've seen it in the slugging, the OPS, and we know that he can exemplify it the way that he certainly did here. So the big question now with Alex Canario is, can you make roster room for this man? That is what I want to know first and foremost. Can you make roster room for Alexander Canario? Do you want to make roster room for Alexander Canario? Because mind you, Canario, as things are currently slated, is looking like he's going to be the Mets, what, 4, 5, 6th outfield option? If we do the math right now between everybody, we're going to have Canario, obviously, and Alex is right now behind Brandon Nimmo. He's behind Juan Soto. He's behind Tyrone Taylor / Jose Siri. So he's in the mix of the Marte, Winker, DH, corner outfield platoon. He's above a guy in Jose Azcar. I think we can all agree on that. But beyond that, I'm not exactly sure as to what the future is going to hold now for Canario, because the Mets have an abundance of options that we know in the outfield positions. Jose Azcar was having a great spring the entire time up until this point, and Azcar is not a guy that's going to start the year on the Mets roster. So why do they have maybe more optimism or more intrigue in Canario? Well, one, there's more untapped potential in Canario. He's younger, obviously, and their power is clearly there. We've seen great power in the early goings from Azucar this spring, but Canario is doing more of what you can expect from him versus a guy in Azucar is truly more of your slap hitting, at best gap to gap outfielder that's going to steal bags for you, have a strong amount of speed there, uber athletic player. But in the case of Canario, he's doing everything he can. He gave the best example possible as to why the Mets should try to have him crack the roster. But the reality is that the Mets are stubborn on wanting two infielders with second base open and the utility spot, which there hasn't been anything to believe that that's wavered at the time of recording this video, that has Alexander Canario on the outside looking in. So what does that mean next? Right as David Stearns alluded to, the next course of action would be for Canario to then find himself in the waiver wire and hoping, God willing, that no team out of the 30 teams in Major League Baseball picks him up, which feels very far-fetched from not happening. It feels like a reality that if Canario is waived, he will more than likely be picked up. There's clearly upside with this kid, and I do not want to see him leave the organization just yet. But this is again, the tough pill to swallow when you have spring training position battles and guys that you acquire, again, at 100K via trade, the way that they did for Terens last year, and it worked, the way that they're hoping it may work now with Canario. But is it too little too late for Canario to crack this Mets roster? And was this performance a little too late, or has this completely opened the floodgates for David Stearns or Carlos Mendoza to maybe rethink a little bit as to what they plan to do with their outfield configuration, the future of Starling Marte, obviously, that they've been trying to trade all offseason, and then heading into the spring training, among other things. There's certainly plenty of things to evaluate on that front. And mind you, Canario wasn't the only one that stepped up on the offensive end in this matchup, because as I said, there were a lot of guys that were doing all the home run and all the gap-to-gap hitting. And it wasn't just guys in Alexander Canario, who I'm very impressed with, to say the least. It's also guys like Brandon Nimmo. Brandon, who got the start at center field today. What? Yeah, I was just as shocked as you were. The same Brandon Nimmo was barking about his, right knee soreness just a week and a half ago, is now getting center field reps. Why is this happening exactly? And the reality is one, the Mets are just trying to make sure they know how healthy Brandon Nimmo is getting ready for the season. Two, they want to see how he would handle center field, which he handled completely fine today. And that's great to know heading into the season that if the Mets are in a pinch for whatever reason, we can defer Nimmo back to there. But I do love how David emphasized when speaking in an interview in the box today, in the booth with Daniel Murphy, Shada Murph, and Gary Cohen, that he is going to be our predominant left fielder. That's like his home now. But if we need to go to Brandon in center, we know we certainly can. And a 3-for-4 day with Brandon Nimmo with back-to-back doubles that we saw there, both scorching doubles off the wall there in right field, a 333 average and just under 1,000 OPS this spring training. Yeah, the bats have come alive big time over the past couple days, which is great to see. And Brandon Nimmo, the most selfless man imaginable, one of the best stories continued in Major League Baseball. And I say that just as someone who cannot not admire Brandon Nimmo and how he carries himself. Out of all athletes that, I've not only maybe interacted with on a personal level or just have witnessed, there have been very few that have carried themselves as humble and as level-headed as Brandon Nimmo has. Balancing the professionalism of what it means to be a player, as well as interacting with the fans, understanding the fan approach, and understanding the business aspect of a front office. Like, from top down, Brandon Nimmo is just so smart, so savvy, and he's a guy that I honestly hope is a part of the Mets organization in different ways after he's a player, because of how much I admire him, his game, and how he carries himself as an individual. But Brandon Nimmo, love what we saw from Brandon. But guys, Brandon wasn't the only one offensively. I know this is crazy, but he still wasn't the only one offensively that stood out. Because you want to know who else stood out offensively? It was star-studded Starling Marte, because of course he did. Marte, we saw rip himself what was a no-doubt solo shot. Marte got in on the action. Tyrone Taylor got in the action that we saw today as well. Acuña had a 1-for-2 day with a walk, which was strong. Taylor 2-for-3 with the run scored. And the homer that we saw, you got to love what you're seeing. Alonso went 1-for-3 with a run scored. The out hit Miami 15-6 in this matchup, which you're never complaining about, obviously. And top to bottom, they just got the job done. Everything you could hope for. Marky V, Swaggy V, shout out to the Vientos family. They know who they are. 1-for-3 with a run scored as well for Mark. Jose Urena gave the Mets 2 shutty today. Genesis Cabrera and Chris Davinsky, all 3 relievers that were told they're not cracking the Mets roster. None of them opted out of their deals. In the case of Jose Urena especially, they're all staying in the organization, which is great. And they all pitched scoreless innings, if not more, today. So great to see from Urena, Genesis Cabrera, Chris Davinsky, because they know, and I'm sure the Mets made it clear through Mendoza and Stearns, that just because you're starting the year in the minor leagues doesn't mean you won't be with us say in the first couple weeks of the year or the first month and the season because of inevitable injuries, because of having to work with guys that have options versus don't have options. There's so much that goes into handling the roster every day for Stearns in the bullpen, and that's exactly why you can never have enough arms to store in AAA. I love the AAA depth the Mets have right now. I'm very happy with the depth that they have at the moment. I think that's going to continue to be a great thing for them. The same way that I think that when we look at the Mets and as we get into opening day, as we get ready for the regular season, there's going to be a lot of things to be ecstatic and get ready and be really feeling grateful for, especially when we look at the guys I think are now going to be given an opportunity, especially in the case of Brett Baty. This is a make or break year for him in a lot of ways in the organization. I'm very excited to see how he's going to pan out and hopefully run away with things there. But now, guys, what is happening when it comes to Luisangel Acuña? Before we move forward into today's video, let me first put you guys onto our sponsor here at SeatGeek. Because guys, as you can tell, I've been using the SeatGeek app well before they became an official sponsor here, thanks to Mets tickets, Rangers tickets, Knicks tickets, concerts, you name it. We got you covered here in the SeatGeek app. And not only do they have over 28 million downloads, making them the #1 rated ticketing app in the game today, and over 70,000 events to choose from, there's one key factor which has stood out from SeatGeek in my opinion, which is why I've been actively using them as much as I've had over the past couple years, and that has been their rating scale. It's very different from other things I've seen in the sense that you go right in the SeatGeek app, you're looking to purchase your latest Mets tickets for the 2025 season, right? And then you get a rating scale 1 to 10, which tells you what is the best bang for your buck. So if I'm going to go click on one ticket, it may give me a rating scale anywhere from 8 to 10 with the color green, and that tells me that's a really good value, a good bang for your buck, and I should probably go and get that ticket. Whereas if I go after another ticket that maybe is on a scale 1 to 5 and isn't more the red, that's telling me I should probably defer away. That isn't going to be the best bang for my buck, and I could do better elsewhere. They're still in the SeatGeek app. They're fair and honest, and that's really stood out a lot to me. And don't worry, guys, I got you covered here because we have the official promo code at WARDY10. That is WARDY10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. And the best part is, it doesn't just need to be for Mets tickets. It can be for whatever you guys want to buy tickets for. So if it's for the Mets 2025 season, whether it's for the upcoming hockey and NBA runs that we have right now, playoff-wise, or right around the corner at the time of recording this, or if you guys want to get in on concert, comedy show action, the way that I currently have my Shane Gillis tickets queued up well before SeatGeek was even a sponsor here for his April show, as well as Creed with Daughtry and someone else I actually have for my parents to see this summer as a late holiday gift for them. So whatever you guys want to buy on the ticketing scene, make sure you do it here with our awesome friends at SeatGeek, and also make sure you head over to the description down below and make sure you click in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account, so that way you can use it later. Shout out to SeatGeek once more for being an amazing sponsor here on the platform. Alrighty, folks, let's get into the Luisangel Acuña talk, because I know you've waited far too long, and I apologize. But like I said, we had a lot to get into first and foremost, and I think that's important. Same way this is important, everybody. Joel Sherman dropped the piece that we first saw earlier today, and that is as follows. The Mets and the Yankees both continue to pursue a right-handed bat. And the case of the Mets, it is specifically in the infield, and the case of the Yankees, it could be infield and or outfield. So as we get into this article, because that's a paywall, but don't worry, Wardy's got you covered. I'm a New York Post contributor, so we make things happen out here, baby. But in all seriousness, let's lock in on the Acuña news, because it's telling. And right away, I'm wondering to myself, why is this the case? And in said piece by Joel Sherman, he notes the following, and I quote, "The Mets have held off announcing an opening day roster in part because they are open to adding a righty infield bat, which almost certainly would lead to Luisangel Acuña being sent to AAA." Now, why is this? Why do we just go from the belief that, okay, Acuña really is feeling more and more like a lock, to now the Mets want to add a veteran bat? Guys, I got to be honest with you, there's one thing that grinds my gears about this far more than anything else. It's the fact that Jose Iglesias was right there. It's the fact that Jose Iglesias still had to opt for a minor league deal with the San Diego Padres. It wasn't like dollars was an issue. I don't want to hear any nonsense that it was in hindsight, because clearly it wasn't. And what he ended up settling for, he's going to crack that Padres roster that we know. I understand that maybe you didn't want to go back with Jose Iglesias because on how his tenure would more than likely end this year, which would be premature, maybe more dramatic with the fans than last year, because the Mets want to give the keys to the kids this year when the opportunity presents itself. But my problem is that after Megill goes down with injury, all these things happen, obviously. And right then and there, you're saying to yourself, wow, it would have made a lot of sense to bring back Jose Iglesias. Now, I think it's can be very true. Now more than ever, you should have brought back Jose Iglesias. I don't know how many times I need to say this nonsense, but it's a reality. Why else are you going after a veteran infielder? There is no veteran infielder that profiled better than Jose Iglesias for this Mets team. There's no one that was more selfless, that would have been a perfect arm to put over as a wing of Acuña, of Jet Williams, of Ronnie Mauricio, of Brett Beatty, everyone and their mother in the infield would have had a fantastic bond, I'm sure, with Jose Iglesias. But instead, they don't go down that route. They stay internal after Nick Madrigal's season was done, and the first play attempt he made, diving there, not even diving, just trying to make a quick throw to first, one-legged, falls right on his shoulder in a very Trevor Story fashion, completely tears the thing, breaks it all up. So he's out for the year, Madrigal, and the Mets decided not to do anything to add to that. So it's like, okay, it's going to be Acuña, it's going to be Beatty, they're going to platoon things. But there's also no good options really out there in the market as we currently sit and talk about this, right? Funny enough, Tage Thompson, who might not be making the team there that we see with the Red Sox, he was a Mets spring training legend from a year ago. He's not even a guy that I would expect the Mets to consider because he profiles more in the corner outfield, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas a guy like, I don't even know. Like, they threw J.D. Davis in this article. I'm like, what are we talking about here? Like, literally, what are we talking about here? So, to make a little bit more sense as to why the Mets will be going down this route, it's a couple reasons. And one, I'd like to make clear that Joel did make note, if the Mets do not add anyone, you could still expect Acuña to begin the year on the Mets roster. So the Mets aren't completely opposed to Acuña beginning the year on the team, but they're trying to almost avoid it right now, even if that means acquiring a player that got no spring reps with them whatsoever, that they're going to acquire last minute to begin the year. That tells you a lot, in my opinion. That tells you enough that clearly there's a lack of comfortability with Acuña. Maybe they don't want to hurt the development of the young man as well, because I know from yesterday's video, one of the biggest comments per likes that we saw in my comment section was, oh, I don't want Acuña to rot on the bench in limited playing time. I understand that, but at the same time, if McNeil's out for the number of weeks to begin the year with injury, this is a time to maximize opportunity for both Beatty and Acuña at second base to see who runs away with that position. You can pretty much have them playing every other game, if not every single game, and you get creative based on how you're going to go about matchups and other things. So I think there is a route to give both Acuña and Beatty fair playing time to begin the year, and a perfect young battle between two infield options battling it out at second base. So there's nothing wrong with that. And if the Mets do opt with that route, still great, fantastic. But here's a couple reasons as to why they may not. And outside of the obvious developmental aspect, which is probably most important to a degree in the case of Acuña, I did find this fascinating yesterday, and shout out to Jack here on X. When breaking down this key article from Anthony Como, there were some key quotes here from Francisco Lindor, and I think these quotes without context look worse than what they actually are, but let me enlighten you, because right now you say, I think he plays bored in spring training. So let's expand on this. So here are the key quotes from Lindor talking about Acuña in Anthony Como's piece yesterday. They are as following, and I quote, I think he plays bored in spring training, Lindor said. If the lights come on, then he's good, like last year in the minors. He was bored, probably. He doesn't get amped up for it. He doesn't get amped up for spring training. It's rare when you see elite big leaguers or good big leaguers dominate the minor leagues. That's what Lindor said. They just get bored, and when they eventually figure it out and say, I guess I've got to do a little bit more to get out there to be called up, then they go and get called up. It wakes them up. Furthermore, here from Lindor, he acts like he don't care, Lindor said. And when you act like you don't care, yeah, you're bored. He's not putting everything he's got into it. He doesn't feel like he's being challenged. That's how Acuña feels, especially at the minor league level, and what we're seeing maybe to a degree this spring training. When asked about the concept, Acuña responded through an interpreter as follows. I think in the major leagues, there's a certain level of adrenaline and energy that just is not in the minor leagues. And that's 1,000% true. Acuña got thrown right into the Mets' heat of their playoff run last year, towards the end of last season, and was a home run machine right away in a number of games, especially in the first games at Citi Field. And while he didn't keep up that home run power consistently, especially leading up to when Lindor got back, he really died down a bit. The point was he was clearly feeding off that adrenaline from the call-up, and was really reveling in, I'm a New York Met, I'm here now, let's maximize this opportunity, how short or long it's going to be. And he did a lot of that, in my opinion. I think a lot of fans are really attached to what Acuña did in a very limited sample size last year. Maybe too much sometimes, that's a fair argument, as well as maybe not enough in the case of what Acuña did, and hoping to get more of that consistently at the major league level in 2025. But to see these quotes from the Mets captain, out of all people, in my opinion, I think it's telling that there's something here. I think it has, a level of maturity to do with it in the case of Acuña, because if he's going out of his way, Lindor, bluntly, to say that he's really not putting his all into it right now, I think that's not a shot, but rather a direct message to Luis Angel Acuña that this is how things need to be. In order for you to be a lock and to be a consistent player here, these are the things you're going to have to do. I've seen it not only with myself, but with other players. So I know there's no better guy that you could reference when understanding the game of baseball than Francisco Mr. Smile Lindor himself. So to have those direct, rather blunt remarks from Lindor when speaking on Acuña makes you wonder about really the comfortability level that the Mets have with Acuña and the Mets organization to begin the year on the roster. Now, as I've said all this, there is still very much a reality that Acuña begins the year on this Mets roster, platooning with Brett Baty for some consistent playing time. That very well can happen should the Mets not drastically add a bat from now up until Thursday. And there's a great reality that the Mets may add a bat up until Thursday, but you also have to wonder how at all does this lump in to the stuff when it comes to Alexander Canario? How at all does it factor into other aspects of this lineup as well? What are the Mets looking for most in a veteran infield option as well that Jose Iglesias wasn't able to provide for them? You know, I think they shot themselves in the foot to a degree when it comes to that, and I'll stand by that because, yes, it would have upset some Mets fans, including myself to a degree, if, say, Iglesias was DFA'd like a month into the season, even when he was playing well, just because we really don't have room for him because we want to give the keys to more kids. I would still be content with that, knowing that the reason is valid because you're trying to give a great opportunity to the kids now, right? But in the case of what the Mets are doing now, it's more of the same in the sense of wanting a filler. But is it because of the development aspect? Is it because of the maturity aspect? I think that there are fair arguments with them all, so I'm going to sit back, wait, and see to see how this thing plays out for the Mets over the next couple days, obviously. We're going to find out some key news I will share either in a video later today, if not part of our big live show, in which we're going to have a lot of fun with that, as I mentioned, around 8:30 p.m. Eastern, barring changes, folks, and then in the content over the next couple days. The Mets, I believe, have their final spring game, or second to last, against the Yankees tomorrow, and then that's pretty much that up until we have opening day this Thursday. Very excited for it, everybody, and I want to know not only your thoughts on Luis Angel Acuña in the comments down below, but do you think it's best for the Mets to start the year with Baty and Acuña in a platoon role, getting rather consistent playing time, even if it's one day Baty, next day is Acuña, up, down, that kind of thing? Or do you like the idea of them adding external bat the way that they appear to be certainly inclined to do so? I would love to hear your thoughts about that in the comments down below, and thank you guys so much for exactly that. We did see Kodai Senga as well as on an innings limit reported by Tim Healy yesterday, pitch limit rather, but that's expected, obviously, coming back from being out with injury pretty much all year long outside the Braves game and some of those not so great starts, especially against the LA Dodgers, but yes, Senga's going to have a little bit of a slow roll and the amount of pitches that he throws getting back, and that's okay. As long as Senga's healthy, that's all that matters to me. I think he's going to be nails for us as long as he can get back in the groove of things. Also, shout out to my guy Jake Brown here on X. Jake posted earlier today that the Piazza Club at Citi Field is now the Heineken Diamond Club, as you guys can see. So they have rebranded things, and before anyone gets in a little bit of a tizzy about it, because I saw some remarks not happy about why are we taking the Piazza Club away? It's the Mike Piazza Club at Citi Field. Why would you deviate away from that? Well, here's the reality. The Piazza Club was still presented by a vodka sponsor at the time. So the only thing that's really changing here is that they're just changing the sponsor of the club. It goes from being a vodka sponsor to now Heineken. And honestly, I kind of like the fact that it's Heineken in just the sense of the green popping. Piazza Club is cool. I've been in there more times than I can count, but it's felt bland to a degree. And I think by adding the visual element of the coloration that you're getting, the Heineken, that the way that we're seeing from the right pick especially, that's going to bode well, I think, for fan interaction, as well as kind of giving it a little bit of a different vibe versus at times the Piazza Club in the past felt a little bit, not corporate, but it just felt like you're missing out a little bit. Whereas in other clubs at Citi Field, especially the Cadillac Club, which is as bougie as they get, and we're going to have a lot of fun with the Cadillac Club this year. Be on the lookout. We're going to wait for some announcements on that one. There's a lot of really cool clubs stuff going on at Citi Field, and they're continuing to expand, but this is really nothing more than a sponsorship change. So I just want to reiterate that. And once more, shout out to Jake, good buddy of mine, and he's continuing to do great things here in the space as well. But guys, that is about going to do it for our latest Mets video. I don't got anything else for you outside of the following key prospect updates that David Stern shared in the Mets booth today with SNY, and they are as follows. Ronnie Mauricio is going to get more reps in Port St. Lucie to begin the year because he's still ramping up, and then once he's fully ramped up and ready to go in PSL, he will then be moved to Syracuse AAA, where he will then be with them until the Mets give him a call, and that be that. In the case of Jet Williams, Jet will start the year in AA, but it shouldn't be long before he makes that move then to AAA Syracuse. Need Jet to stay healthy, as he, like Drew Gilbert, missed the majority of last year due to injury. In the case of Jet, it was because of a wrist injury that he ended up needing surgery on, on, and then he was out the majority of the year and then ramped up back in the Arizona Fall League that we saw last fall, winter area. What positions are they going to play, you might wonder? Well, Jet's going to actually get more center field reps than ever before this year, so that's notable because clearly the Mets are trying to stretch out Jet Williams and his upside as an outfielder, and I like that, especially knowing how much we have a logjam right now with our infield prospects as things currently stand. It also makes him maybe a bit more desirable in the trade front. Not that I want Jet to be traded, but if you're versatile and you can play multiple positions proficient, that's only going to bode well for you and your value as a player. The same way that we look at a guy in Ronnie Mauricio, we're going to have him play short, second, and third. He's going to play pretty much every infield position, not named first and catcher, and that's going to be key to watch to see what he thrives in, what he struggles in, how does he handle the bat-to-ball skills from both the left and the right side of the plate as well, as we know he's fluctuated a lot from the right side versus the left side in recent years. How does that project at the Syracuse level when he eventually gets there, where he's torn the cover off the ball? A lot of things to figure out on the prospect front, but we're going to have a lot of fun this year breaking down together. But Mets fans, that's about going to do it for our latest Mets video. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know all your key takeaways in the comments down below. Where do you stand on the Acuña news among everything else that we broke down in this one? And again, be on the lookout for a really fun, a real deep dive of a Mets roster live show later on tonight, where I'm going to be tier ranking where they stand as to if they're elite, if they're not, if they shouldn't even be on this team, what have you. And we're going to do this as a really fun fan subscriber interaction. Thank you guys again, folks. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets. Peace out.